You know that feeling when parts of your life just feel broken? And no matter what you try, the fixes are just temporary. Well, today on The Explainer, we're unpacking a really fascinating presentation by Myron Golden that hits the nail on the head regarding this exact feeling. Golden approaches life struggles not with quick life hacks, but with a deeply systematic theological framework he calls the highway to success. It's a model built entirely on biblical interpretations, presenting a step-by-step method for restoring what he identifies as a severed foundational connection. We're going to break down his core arguments and visually map out exactly how this framework is designed to function. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's the roadmap we'll use to unpack this theological framework step by step. 1. The categories of creation. 2. The severed connection. 3. Seeking the Lord's presence. 4. Submitting to supreme principles. 5. Standing on sure promises. And 6. The gardener and the garden. So, step 1. The categories of creation. All right, the foundational premise of this whole framework is the idea that heaven gives earth its meaning, and earth gives heaven its expression. To really grasp this, Golden breaks the known universe down to 3 distinct categories. First up, there is simply creation. Think the sun, the stars, the grass, the trees. Second, there are creatures, like eagles soaring through the sky or cheetahs sprinting across the plains. And finally, the third category is creative creators, which represents men and women. And this brilliantly illustrates the hierarchy of the speaker's worldview. See, creation and creatures, they possess form, meaning they're beautiful to look at, and they also possess function. They do exactly what they were designed to do, but they are missing something absolutely crucial. A tree or a cheetah can't exactly contemplate or appreciate the entity that made them, right? Mankind, however, was explicitly designed with form, function, and a third element, fellowship. According to this presentation, humanity was uniquely created for connection. Golden reinforces this idea through a fascinating linguistic breakdown of the Hebrew word for man, Adam. He explains that the word is actually formed by combining aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which represents God or spirit, with dam, which is the Hebrew word for blood. So by this definition, a human being is fundamentally a godlike creature wrapped in flesh and blood. You literally have a spirit to download meaning from above and flesh to express that meaning right here on earth. You are the hardware explicitly built to be connected to a divine network. Which brings us to part 2, the severed connection. So if mankind is hardware designed for a divine network, what happens when somebody yanks the cord? Well, the speaker argues that this severed connection is the root cause of literally every single external struggle and broken element in human life. He traces this back to the biblical narrative of the Garden of Eden. The initial act of sin, that represents the exact moment the connection was severed. And what follows is huge in this framework. Adam and Eve try to cover their nakedness with fig leaves. Golden views these fig leaves as a symbol of human religion, man's feeble DIY attempts to cover up a divine disconnection. But the source material points out that God replaces those fig leaves with coats of animal skin. That required a blood sacrifice. It was a divine contribution, signaling that humanity's own efforts just aren't enough to fix the broken connection. It requires a solution from a higher source. So this leaves us with a massive question staring right at us. If our foundational connection was severed in the past, and our own attempts to stitch it back together are just fig leaves, how do we actually fix what's broken in our lives today? How do we get back on the network? This is where the practical application of the highway to success really kicks in. Step 3. Seeking the Lord's presence. To fix what's broken, you can't start by seeking better life strategies or even by participating in religious routines. You have to begin by seeking presence. This is anchored by a quote from the book of Isaiah. "Seek ye the Lord while he may be found. Call ye upon him while he is near." Golden emphasizes the incredible accessibility highlighted in this text. The presence you need to fix the brokenness isn't hidden away or impossible to reach. It is near and it is available right now. So the crucial point is the order of operations. Golden points out a really common misconception. People often believe they need to fix their bad habits or clean themselves up before they can seek this divine connection. It's kind of like frantically cleaning your house before the maid arrives. But the framework argues the exact opposite. Because divine mercy is abundant, the connection happens first. You bring the mess to the source, and the connection itself provides the power required to actually do the cleanup. Moving on to step 4, submitting to supreme principles. Seeking presence gets you on the road, for sure, but submitting to higher principles is how you get up to cruising speed. The speaker draws a sharp contrast between our earthly, subjective human logic and the pure, supreme principles of the divine. And Golden uses a fantastic visual analogy here. Imagine an airplane pilot cruising at 30,000 feet, traveling at 500 miles an hour. When that pilot looks down at the Earth, everything, the cars, the buildings, our massive human endeavors, looks incredibly tiny and insignificant. That vast gap in altitude represents the absolute asymmetry between human logic and divine principles. When we insist on doing things our way, we are operating from the ground. The framework insists that true success requires abandoning earthly logic and submitting to a higher, supreme vantage point. Step 5. Standing on sure promises. Submitting to foreign principles that feel higher than our own obviously requires trust, but the source material claims this trust yields absolute, guaranteed outcomes. Golden grounds this guarantee in another passage from Isaiah, comparing the supreme principles of God to the physical laws of precipitation. Just as rain and snow fall from heaven to water the earth, so do these divine words and principles operate in our lives. Let's move to and see how this builds into a really concrete analogy for success. Rain falls from heaven, right? And it waters the earth. But crucially, as the speaker notes, the rain literally forces the earth to produce bud and seed. It doesn't suggest it, it doesn't just help it out, it physically makes it happen. Finally, it accomplishes its exact purpose. Golden argues that divine principles work with that same unyielding inevitability. If you plant your life in them, they will aggressively force growth and produce results. They will not return void. And what is that end result? What does the framework define as success? Well, it's not necessarily just making a lot of money, though the speaker notes that serving people at a high level can certainly result in that. Rather, ultimate success is defined simply as fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. Just like the rain provides seed to the sower and bread to the eater, adhering to these supreme principles ensures you become highly productive and fulfill your exact designated function. And finally, step 6, the gardener and the garden. To tie all of these concepts together, we return to the beginning to explore a deeply empowering dual metaphor regarding human potential. The speaker looks at the word Eden. In Hebrew, Eden translates to pleasure, and the concept of a garden signifies an enclosure or a protected place. This means the original, ideal environment for humanity to flourish was one of absolute protection, pleasure, and provision. But Golden points out a concept he calls triple inception. According to the text, God planted the garden first and then placed mankind inside it to tend it. But man was formed from the very same dirt, the exact same dust of the ground that the garden was growing in. Furthermore, by breathing life into man, a spiritual seed was planted inside him. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it reframes our entire internal world. As the quote says, "The man is not just the gardener, the man is also the garden." According to Golden's Highway, your job isn't just to try and manipulate your external circumstances. Your real job is to act as the gardener of your own internal soil, watering yourself daily with supreme principles so that you can grow spiritual fruit from the inside out. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If this framework holds true, if we are meant to be connected to a divine network, submitting to higher principles that force guaranteed growth, then our internal soil is the most valuable real estate we possess. As both the gardener and the garden, what seeds are you watering within yourself today? Are they the earthly seeds of subjective logic, or are they the supreme principles designed to fix what is broken? Thank you for joining us for this explainer, and keep tending to your garden.